So, Malika, I want to start with you first, because we're looking at, of course, that very powerful theatre performance, which in fact we know was very, very well received, very critically acclaimed in many parts of where it was in fact shown. But she talks about the idea of shame and about how, we feel almost, people who've been the victims of sexual harassment have so far been shamed into not speaking, shamed into silence. But a lot of that has changed in the last 1 year.
Absolutely. I think the big change that's happened over the last year is that a lot of people feel compelled to speak. They feel compelled to speak up against things that have happened to them, things that are happening around them, even if they feel, even if they're speaking just in support, like people are now talking. A lot of performers are now talking, musicians are talking, poets are writing. And that's, I think, the biggest change that I have seen in the city of Delhi, where people used to be so indifferent to what's happening to people around them. That's changed. People actually are concerned. People do care. People do make an effort to raise their voice, even if it's a small Facebook post, even if it's just a discussion at a party. But there is constantly talk about what's happening, why women are treated the way they are, and how it's wrong and what could be done about it.
There's a constant engagement with that issue, and that makes it very significant to actually manufacture some kind of a change. But I'm just going to take off from what Malika said and come to Mihira. Mihira, Malika's talking about the fact that many women are now coming out and talking about what was otherwise considered shame. You were one of them. Tell me, did this movement actually inspire you to do that?
I think inspire is perhaps the wrong word, but I think it certainly encouraged me, and the fact that it was there gave me the faith that there was a supportive environment within which I would be heard. All too often we're told that conversation isn't enough, talking isn't enough. But I think when it comes to sexual crimes, when it comes to these kind of issues, talking helps in a number of ways. One, men who do this kind of thing actually count on the silence of women, and that encourages them to do this. And that talking actually breaks that implicit faith that they have. And two, so much of the problem around crimes of sexual violence is the stigmatizing effect, and it is only silence that breeds that stigma. So you're doing a lot by talking, and you're a supportive environment in which other women come out and talk.
Mihira, I just want to actually come back to you for one quick question. Today we're also looking at a situation where there is a chorus of voices now unanimously saying that, former Justice Gangu should in fact step down in the face of those allegations of sexual harassment by that law intern. He, of course, remains defiant. How do you see that in the context of what we're talking about today? Do you think that that's a good start, that we're all asking for him to step down, or do you think there's a long, long way to go?
No, it's certainly encouraging. It's encouraging that people think that this is enough of a blot on one's record. It's enough of a sin for him to not be fit to continue in that position anymore. And let's be clear, this is no longer just a question of one person's word against another. This is no longer a question of an allegation. He's been indicted by a Supreme Court committee. So in that sense, yes, it is encouraging that people are taking these things seriously. However, I do have a few concerns about the way the intern's affidavit was leaked to the press.
Yes, of course, and we did have additional Solicitor General Indira Jaising earlier tell NDTV that affidavit was in fact leaked only after full consent with that young intern. So we'll have to go with a word on that. But I just want to bring you in, Neha. One of the things we saw in the last 1 year is protest. Nobody had any idea that an incident of gang rape, which is not uncommon in India, would become so unifying across cities, across towns, in villages, online, globally, everywhere. This was the one thing that really, really brought everybody together. Tell me, what is the kind of impact that you've seen both in smaller towns where you are right now, in Lucknow, for example? Has this really had an impact, or is this just an urban phenomenon?
See, I don't think it. I'll start with an example. I recently wrote about this 25-year-old girl who was being repeatedly raped by her father and her brother for 9 years, and the mother was in the know. And when I interviewed her, when I met her, she told me that she saw these December 16 protests where people were talking about their wives, daughters, mothers, sisters, and demanding safety for them. And then she realized she's also one of them who's being raped by her own father and brother. And eventually she mustered the courage to go to the Jan Darbar of the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister and finally registered a complaint. So, you know, the impact is not Delhi-centric. You know, for her to be able to come out and speak up against her own father and brother is a brave thing, and getting inspired by seeing the December 16 protest, that definitely answers the question that what was the impact of December 16 protest. The second most important thing is that in not just in Delhi, but I think across India, with the kind of patriarchal setups that we live in, where, you know, you are supposed to change the channel if there's a report on rape on television news, on television. Now, to be actually sitting and to be able to discuss rape and sexual harassment in front of the male members in the family, I think is a big achievement in itself. Thirdly, I think social media has played a big role, because right now, the moment somebody molests you or harasses you while you're on the road or somewhere, you click a picture, you post it on web, and you post it on social media, and it's everywhere, and people react to it. So the point that anybody who's
sorry, go on.
The most important thing that it has done is that when you say that somebody is sexually harassing you, you are, I'm hoping that you are not seen as a troublemaker, just a troublemaker any longer, which was usually the case, because the moment you report about sexual harassment, you were tagged as a troublemaker. You know, so I think that we have managed to dent that image or that assumption, I think.
Neha, in fact, I'm going to pick up on one of the things you said, social media, which has really been at the forefront, in fact, of trying to get a lot of mobilization, not just for women, but against misogyny, against patriarchy. And just to pick up recently on one of the movements that we've seen, which has brought people out on the streets yet again, is, of course, a movement against that recent Supreme Court judgment. And a lot of that movement is actually played out on social media, and Arvind will talk about it. Even those protests in Delhi, which happened just yesterday in the afternoon, activists were live tweeting from that event. It was a global protest that was organized. This, of course, is a page on which so many people from Bollywood have, in fact, come out and spoken against that Supreme Court judgment, and very, very vocally and very pointedly and definitively put their stand out, saying it's regressive, bigoted, and discriminatory. For example, that's what Rahul Khanna has said. And I'd like to actually bring in Arvind on that, who is from Bangalore and has been fighting for the rights for not just the LGBT community, but for all of us in a sense. Arvind, you know, in a sense, it's, you know, we started off, of course, with that movement which fought for the freedom of women. But now we're seeing movements, whether they're played online or offline or a combination of both, we're seeing people come out and say, hey, listen, it's time for us to reclaim our rights.
Right. The movement is really a movement against Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which criminalizes what it calls carnal intercourse against the order of nature. But in the Indian context, what is the order of nature is very clearly, if it's inter-religious marriages, it's against the order of nature. If it's inter-caste marriages, it's against the order of nature. If it's two people of the same sex who decide to love each other, that's against the order of nature. So you're very right when you say that there's a connection between the freedom which women put forward in the light of the Nirbhaya incident and the freedom which LGBT people are putting forward today. And in our sense, we see the two movements as being integrally connected, because both are really articulating the idea that people have a right to live free of social and cultural codes of intolerance and violence, as it were.